Have you ever wondered why, despite working tirelessly, you still carry this nagging feeling that you're not doing enough, not achieving enough, not really making progress in today's fast-paced world, especially for young people racing through their careers? The sense of "I'm falling behind" has become an almost constant companion. Social media achievement-driven culture and stories of billionaires making it big by 25 keep pushing us to doubt ourselves. Am I doing enough? Am I where I'm supposed to be? Am I really growing, or just fooling myself? Surprisingly, this feeling often isn't a true reflection of reality. In fact, many people are doing far better than they think, but they simply don't realize it. The problem lies in how we assess ourselves. We tend to overlook the small, steady wins and the quiet but meaningful efforts we make. Ironically, the more we grow, the harder we are on ourselves. Take, for example, an office worker who puts in 60 hours a week but feels guilty for not getting promoted. Meanwhile, an outsider might see him as the very definition of dedication and perseverance. The gap between how we feel about our progress and what's actually happening is often much bigger than we think. So, how can you really tell if you're doing better than you think? And how do you know if you're genuinely making progress or just comforting yourself with illusions? The answers aren't simple, but there are signs you shouldn't ignore. To understand why we often feel like we're not enough, we need to return to a fundamental truth. The human brain isn't wired to judge ourselves fairly. Instead, it leans towards something called negativity bias, a natural tendency to focus more on what's wrong than on what's going well, even when both are present at the same time. From an evolutionary perspective, this bias was once a survival mechanism. In the wild, remembering potential threats was far more important than stopping to enjoy a peaceful moment. But in modern life, this negativity bias works against us. It causes us to constantly replay failures, criticisms, and setbacks while completely overlooking the hundreds of positive, consistent actions we take every single day. This is especially true for young people building their careers, particularly in the hyper-competitive environment of the United States. Many get trapped in an endless cycle of comparison. Someone might feel like they're falling behind simply because a peer just got promoted. An entrepreneur might forget that they've successfully kept their business afloat through 3 turbulent years just because they haven't hit their revenue target yet. Social media only intensifies this negativity bias by bombarding us with carefully curated highlight reels of other people's lives. The real problem isn't the objective reality, it's how our minds interpret it. In his book Thinking Fast and Slow, Daniel Kahneman explained that people tend to draw conclusions based on the most vivid moments rather than the full picture. We remember when we failed, but we forget all the times we quietly persisted without anyone noticing. That's why the feeling of "I'm not good enough" isn't the truth. It's a distorted product of our biased mental filters. But are there real signs that you're doing better than you think? Yes, and those signs are right in front of you. Take just 3 seconds to hit the subscribe button so you won't miss the upcoming videos. If negativity bias causes us to see life through a distorted lens, then the next logical step is to search for the opposite evidence, the signs that you're actually doing better than you think. And the truth is, those signs aren't hard to find. They're often hidden in the things you quietly do every day without even realizing their true value. First, real progress isn't about sudden breakthroughs. It's about steady, consistent growth over time. An average employee might feel like they're just struggling to survive. But in reality, showing up every day, sticking to routines, and facing pressure without quitting are all clear signs of progress. Progress isn't about reaching the top overnight. It's about continuing to move forward, even when no one is applauding you. For example, there are people who get up early, meet their deadlines, and consistently work on improving their skills. Over time, these steady efforts place them far ahead of those who quietly give up. But because there are no big flashy moments to celebrate, they mistakenly believe they're still not good enough. As philosopher Ralph Waldo Emerson once said, "Adopt the pace of nature. Her secret is patience. Nature never rushes yet. Everything gets done in its own perfect time." We tend to underestimate the power of persistent slow steps, but it's this patience in small daily actions that lays the solid foundation for future breakthroughs. What's more, comparing yourself to others often leads to the wrong conclusions. We forget that everyone starts from a different place with different resources, different life circumstances, and different support systems. Someone who's consistently pushing forward despite limited resources may actually be making far more meaningful progress than someone else whose success looks obvious on the surface. The most important thing to realize is the evidence that you're doing better than you think often hides in the ordinary habits you've been overlooking. But have you been using the right measure to judge yourself? Maybe the issue isn't your progress, it's how you're measuring it. One of the main reasons we often feel like we're not good enough is because we're using measuring sticks that don't actually belong to us. We judge ourselves by society's standards, by our coworkers' achievements, by the success of celebrities, and sometimes by some idealized version of ourselves that we can't even clearly define. The issue isn't the effort, it's how you're measuring that effort. Are you measuring yourself by Elon Musk's speed? By Jeff Bezos's net worth? By the popularity of some random influencer? If so, you're using the wrong benchmarks, ones that may be completely unrealistic. Someone who's just starting a small business with limited resources can't judge themselves by the standards of a multinational corporation. Likewise, a young employee can't fairly compare themselves to a CEO who's been honing their skills for 30 years. It's like imagining an amateur runner in a local marathon who feels discouraged because they didn't hit the times of Olympic athletes. That kind of comparison isn't just unfair, it actively destroys your own motivation. Every race has a different finish line. Someone else's measuring stick doesn't have to be yours. Stoic philosophy emphasizes this point as well. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Do not waste the rest of your life worrying about what others think of you. What matters is not what you've achieved, but how hard you've tried within your own unique circumstances. Did you outgrow who you were yesterday? Did you persist even when no one was watching?" That's the measurement that truly counts. A common mistake is that we judge ourselves solely by results, when in reality, it's the process that shapes who we become. One person may spend 5 years carefully building a solid foundation, while another might see quick results in just 5 months. But which foundation is going to last? Here's the key if you're using someone else's measuring stick. Your conclusions about yourself are likely flawed. But even if you've chosen the right measure, are you sure you're not just comforting yourself with illusions? That's the real question you need to face, even though we've discussed that many people are actually doing better than they think. There's an important possibility we can't ignore. Sometimes we might be comforting ourselves with subtle self-deception. Telling yourself "I'm doing better than I think" can occasionally become a clever shield that hides stagnation, laziness, or the fear of facing harsh realities. In psychology, this is known as self-serving bias, the tendency to protect our ego by interpreting events in a way that favors ourselves. For example, when someone gets passed over for a promotion, they might quickly say, "My company just doesn't recognize talent." But are they really giving their best? Or are they using that excuse to avoid taking a hard look at the areas where they still need to grow? Take another example. An entrepreneur who has failed 3 times in a row might say, "I'm learning. I'm progressing in my own way." And that could be true, but it might also be a convenient story that covers up an unwillingness to change strategies or admit they're headed in the wrong direction. Telling yourself "I'm doing fine" isn't always a sign of growth. Sometimes it's just a trap that keeps you safely stuck in your comfort zone. To avoid falling into this trap, you need to adopt a serious attitude of self-examination. Are the things you're doing really pushing you to put in consistent effort? Or are you operating within a comfort zone that you've convinced yourself is good enough? The difference is subtle, but it's the line that separates real growth from dangerous self-soothing. This doesn't mean you should dismiss all your achievements. It simply means you need to keep asking yourself, am I truly moving forward, or am I standing still and calling it patience? So, is it possible that people sometimes overestimate themselves and accidentally create a false sense of success? Let's explore the hidden dangers in the next part. While the idea that you're doing better than you think is often true, it's not always the case. Some people genuinely overestimate themselves. They believe that small, inconsistent efforts are enough to prove they're making progress, when in reality, they're either standing still or worse, moving backward. This is a classic example of what could be called the trap of micro-complacency, where people quickly feel satisfied with minor progress without checking whether they're actually on track toward their long-term goals. For instance, an amateur stock investor who makes a few small gains might convince themselves they're a savvy investor, when in fact, those wins were more about luck than skill. When the market takes a serious turn, these individuals often suffer the biggest losses because they've been misjudging their own abilities all along. Not everyone has the self-awareness to recognize the fine line between real progress and imagined progress. Some people keep reinforcing an illusion of success, using flimsy evidence, a casual compliment barely meeting minimum standards, or random lucky breaks. That's why we can't automatically assume that everyone is doing better than they think. Sometimes what people really need isn't comfort. It's a more honest, even tougher look at themselves. So how can you tell the difference between real progress and self-deception? What are the signs of fair and accurate self-assessment? The answers will start to reveal themselves in the next part. To avoid falling into either extreme undervaluing yourself or making excuses, you need a fair and reliable system of self-checking. Accurate self-assessment isn't based on fleeting emotions or superficial recognition. It's built on objective signs that show you're truly making progress. The first sign is how often you step into real challenges. If you regularly push yourself outside your comfort zone, take on difficult tasks, or willingly accept the risk of failure in order to grow, that's a strong indicator you're progressing. On the other hand, if you've been sticking to familiar routines for too long and avoiding anything new, your sense of confidence might actually be an illusion. The second sign is your ability to maintain long-term discipline without relying on external motivation. People who are truly growing don't need someone constantly watching over them or offering endless praise. They've built a solid system of action that keeps moving, even on the days when they don't feel inspired. The third sign is what you've learned from your most recent failures. People who are really progressing don't run from mistakes, they dissect their failures to gain deeper self-understanding. In contrast, those who are stagnating often brush failures aside or blame external circumstances without changing their approach. These signs aren't based on feelings. They're the true compass for fair and accurate self-assessment. But there's still one final question. After all this, are you willing to accept the honest conclusion about where you really stand? That's the ultimate challenge you must face. You're doing better than you think. If you're willing to focus on the process instead of obsessing over immediate results, you're doing better than you think if you keep moving forward, even when no one is clapping for you. You're doing better than you think if you continue to face the challenges that scare you without backing down. Real success doesn't come from simply feeling good about yourself. It comes from being honest about the journey you're on. True progress is often a slow curve, sometimes dull, but no less remarkable because of it. If you can check yourself against the signs we've discussed, facing challenges, maintaining discipline, learning from failure, then even if the external results aren't there yet, you're still on the right path. But if you're avoiding the truth, if you're comforting yourself with soft excuses, you might actually be lost in the illusion of progress. The real question isn't whether you're doing well or not. It's this: do you have the courage to truly see yourself as you are? If you find the video helpful, hit like and subscribe so you won't miss the upcoming videos, and don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments below.